Exposed. How I transformed my daughter's life after her mother-in-law humiliated her in public. Sarah stood frozen, her pulse racing as Carol's words sliced through the chatter of the local art fair. This is childish. What a waste of time. The vibrant colors surrounding them blurred as she watched Emma's face drain of its usual spark, the weight of doubt crashing down like a heavy storm cloud. How could someone who should uplift her child inflict such damage? A deep-seated fear gripped Sarah's heart. What if this moment fractured Emma's dreams permanently? The very aspirations that had painted their lives with warmth now seemed threatened by the cold brush of Carol's disdain. The art fair should have been a celebration. Sarah had envisioned laughter and creativity flourishing, but now the joy felt distant, overshadowed by Carol's sharp criticism. With each second that passed, the air thickened, and Sarah could feel every pair of eyes in the crowd bore down on them. How could she defend her daughter against family, the very fabric of their lives? Her mind raced through tangled thoughts. Confrontation? Certainly not. Carol had always found a way to manipulate words, bending reality into a knife that could cut. But was silence an option? That evening, after they returned home, Sarah saw the glimmer of hope dimming in Emma's eyes. As she sat beside her on the couch, the glow of the television flickering between them, an unsettling urgency filled Sarah. She was proud of Emma for pouring her soul into art, yet now she feared it might be perceived as a frivolous pursuit by those who should have cheered her on. Could she find a way to convince Emma that her dreams mattered? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days turned into weeks, and each moment felt like a battlefield. Sarah's determination to shield Emma fueled her. She sought out mentors, those who could nurture Emma's artistic potential. Then, as if fate intervened, she met Mrs. Thompson. The retired professor became an unexpected ally, fanning the flickering flame of Emma's creative spirit. Yet as Emma began to flourish, anxiety tightened its grip around Sarah's chest. What would Carol say? What would she think? The art world could be brutal, and the upcoming exhibition loomed like a shadow. Sarah's nights became restless as she listened to Emma paint away, her brush gliding smoothly across the canvas, revealing feelings Sarah had only glimpsed. Still, she couldn't shake off the nagging fear. Would Carol recognize Emma's talent, or further diminish it with her harsh judgments? As the day of the exhibition approached, an overwhelming anguish consumed Sarah. Two paths lay ahead: the defensive urge to shield her daughter from further hurt and the desperate need for validation that might never come from the one person who should provide it. Tension crackled like electricity. Both the stakes of Emma's future and the strength of their family bond hung in the balance. Would love prevail? Or would the darkness of insecurity poison their journey? The night before the exhibition settled heavily on Sarah's shoulders, the air thick with unspoken words. She could hear the soft brushstrokes from Emma's room, a soft reminder of the creative release that had become Emma's sanctuary. But despite the comforting rhythm, Sarah knew that tomorrow would bring inevitable judgment not only from the audience, but from Carol as well. What if Carol saw the art as a mere hobby, another triviality to ridicule? Sarah couldn't simply stand by as countless opportunities slipped through Emma's fingers because of cruel words. It wasn't merely about art. It was about identity and self-worth, the very essence of who Emma was becoming. Sarah had encountered her own existential crossroads over the years, moments that tested her resolve, but this felt different. This was about Emma's future, and the relentless threat of Carol's disapproval stoked a fire in Sarah's belly. That night, an idea began to form. What if she turned the conversation around? She couldn't control Carol's opinions, nor could she shield Emma indefinitely. Instead, maybe she could empower Emma, not just to face judgment, but to challenge it, transforming hurt into fuel for ambition. It was a radical thought, one that contrasted sharply with her instinctual desire to protect. But sometimes protection meant preparation, and she had to teach Emma how to navigate public scrutiny, not avoid it. With renewed purpose, Sarah rose early, filled with a sense of urgency. She planned a day of heart-to-heart discussions, strategies, and resilience training. As Emma emerged, bleary-eyed and hopeful, Sarah wasted no time. "Emma," she began, her tone bright yet sincere, "today is your day to shine. I want to equip you with the strength to face whatever comes. Let's talk about how you can respond to criticism. Let's prepare you to own your passion." At first, Emma blinked in surprise, skeptical of her mother's sudden insistence. But as Sarah shared anecdotes of artists who had faced rejection and negativity, Emma began to nod, recognition slowly dawning. "But what if they don't like it, Mom?" Emma expressed, her voice trembling, a mix of courage and uncertainty. "What if Carol spreads her negativity?" Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her own fears swell. She recognized this moment as a litmus test for both her and Emma's growth. What if you create art that transforms just one person? Imagine facing both critics and supporters, knowing that each perspective can be an opportunity for growth. You are strong enough to filter out negativity and embrace support. As the hours faded into a whirlwind of intensity, the pivotal discussions unveiled hidden strengths within Emma. They engaged in practical what-if scenarios to prepare for the exhibition's potential highs and lows. As Sarah watched her daughter bounce back from imagined criticisms with tenacity, a spark ignited within her. This journey of empowerment was not only for Emma, it was their shared evolution. When it was finally time to leave for the exhibition, Sarah felt the bubbling aura of pride swell in her chest. Emma wore a new expression, a mix of vulnerability and fierce determination. Leaving behind the dark shadow of Carol's anticipated judgment, they stepped into the sunlight, ready to tackle the day. But just as they reached the entrance, they spotted Carol, her piercing eyes scanning through the crowd. Sarah's breath caught. She hadn't anticipated this confrontation. All the planned resilience seemed to slip away in a moment, replaced by uncertainty. "Remember what we talked about?" Emma whispered, her voice steady with newfound confidence. Was Sarah ready for this confrontation? Would she truly allow her daughter to face the dragons of disapproval alone? The stakes had changed. It was more than art now. It was about standing firm in the face of negativity, a test of their newly forged bond. And at that moment, as she locked eyes with Carol, Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her. Tomorrow's triumph or tribulation hinged on the choices they'd make today. Would this be a moment of unity, or the beginning of a deeper divide? Sarah's heart raced as she faced Carol, the woman whose critical presence had cast a long shadow over Emma's artistic aspirations. Everything they had discussed felt fragile against the backdrop of this tense moment. She could sense Carol's scrutiny in the air, a tightening around her chest, and her instinct screamed for self-preservation. Yet she also felt Emma's confidence radiating beside her, a tangible reminder of what they had built together in their heart-to-heart discussions. Carol approached with an expression neither warm nor cold, but decidedly judgmental, her eyes narrowing at the artwork displayed behind Emma. "Nice to see you both," she said, her voice dripping with an insincere sweetness. "Emma, it's admirable that you've kept yourself busy with your little projects." The word hung in the air like a lit fuse, poised to ignite. Sarah felt a wave of instinctive anger rise up, but she also knew that this was about more than just her feelings. It was about teaching Emma the art of resilience. "Thank you, Carol," Emma replied, her voice steady. Sarah marveled at the bravery in Emma's gaze, feeling a flicker of pride. This was no longer just her daughter's battle. It was about transforming their lives, their narratives. "How odd that you've chosen to display your work in a venue so public," Carol continued, the words piercing deeper. Sarah could almost see the gears turning in Carol's mind, likely calculating how to best undermine Emma's efforts. But Emma stood firm. "Art should be experienced, right? It's not just about what others think. It's how it makes people feel." In that moment, Sarah felt something shift within her. This wasn't about whether Carol appreciated Emma's work. It was about Emma's relentless pursuit of her truth in the face of critics, and Sarah couldn't allow herself to be a barrier for that truth. "Yes, exactly," Sarah interjected, her voice gaining strength. "Art is meant to challenge perception. It compels a dialogue, even if that dialogue isn't always kind. Emma has cultivated her creativity, and it's not just a hobby, it's her passion." Carol's eyebrows shot up in surprise, clearly not expecting this unexpected support from Sarah. But as that surprise faded, the line of her mouth tightened. "Well, it's commendable that you put forth the effort," she said coolly, "though not everyone can afford to indulge in such whims." The tension felt like electric static, crackling around them. Sarah summoned all the courage she had, not just for herself, but for Emma. It's important to understand that every artist, every creator, faces criticism. It's not about shielding Emma from negativity, but preparing her to stand against it. Carol's expression hardened, and for a moment, Sarah feared she would lash out. Instead, something unexpected happened. Emma stepped forward, vulnerability palpable, yet united in strength. "School has been hard, Carol. I've struggled, but art has been my way of finding myself. Every pain I've felt, I've channeled into my work. If you see that as a whim, that's on you." The words flowed with a mixture of assertiveness and unyielding honesty, and for Sarah, it felt like watching a flower bloom in harsh sunlight. Sarah could almost feel the weight lift off Emma's shoulders. This exchange wasn't merely transactional, it was transformational. As they drew breath, Sarah saw Carol's irritation morph into a contemplative silence. But then, Carol slipped into her usual demeanor, fixing her gaze back onto Sarah. "It's adorable that you think this is empowerment. Just remember that passion doesn't always pay the bills. People talk." In the silence that followed, Sarah's resolve burned brighter. This was more than a moment of conflict. It was the beginnings of reclamation. She felt Emma exhale beside her, and she knew their journey had just taken a decisive turn. As they stepped away from the confrontation, Sarah's mind raced. Had they evaded shame? Had they asserted their right to be seen and heard? They had stood together, but who would forge their path going forward? What awaited them couldn't be clearer. The real exhibition was yet to come, the unveiling of their true selves, flawed yet emergent, deepening the expression of their bond. What would the next chapter hold as they navigated this harsh world, emboldened by love yet haunted by doubt? The question lingered heavily in Sarah's mind as they moved forward, determined to embrace the journey ahead. As they walked away from Carol, Sarah felt a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. The adrenaline of confrontation coursed through her veins, yet each step away from that exchange felt heavier than the last. The air was thick with unspoken words and unprocessed emotions, and she knew this was only the beginning. "Mom, did you really mean what you said?" Emma's question cut through the fog of Sarah's thoughts. The sincerity in her daughter's eyes was both a beacon and a challenge. Could she stand firm in the commitment she had just made, not just to Emma, but to herself? "I did," Sarah replied, her voice steady but wavering with the echo of doubt. "We can't let people like Carol define who we are or what we produce. It's about owning our choices, Emma. You know that." Emma nodded, though her expression remained a mixture of uncertainty and pride. Sarah could feel the weight of her daughter's gaze, a blend of admiration and a plea for affirmation. They needed to discuss this further. This was an inflection point, perhaps even a reckoning. They settled at a nearby cafe, the comforting smell of fresh coffee enveloping them as they took a seat at a small table in the corner. Sarah absently fidgeted with a sugar packet while watching Emma pore over her sketches, her features illuminated by the soft light. "What are you thinking?" Emma asked, breaking the silence. "I'm thinking about how we've allowed others to shape our perceptions. For years, I played it safe, letting fear dictate my choices. And I see it now in how I've supported you," Sarah confessed. She leaned forward, lowering her voice so only Emma could hear. "That has to change. We have to challenge our limits." The intensity of their conversation put a tangible weight in the air. Sarah knew they were on the precipice of something transformative. It wasn't just about confronting Carol. It was about confronting their own internal barriers. She had spent too much time fitting into someone else's narrative. Now, armed with Emma's determination, the time had come to rewrite that story. "Mom, I think you've always held back too," Emma said, her voice not unkind but resolute. "What holds you back?" Fingers trembling, Sarah hesitated, battling the urge to deflect. Childlike fears bubbled to the surface, fear of judgment, and a longing for validation that stemmed from years of conditioning. "What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough?" "Then you keep going. You keep creating," Emma responded, the confidence in her voice infectious. "You don't give in to that fear. You confront it." The weight of those words hung between them like a lifeline. As Sarah absorbed this moment, an unexpected warmth bloomed inside her. Emma was right. This was a chance for them both to reclaim their individual narratives. It was time to strip away the layers of doubt and take that leap into the unknown. As they left the cafe, Sarah felt a shift, no longer just an observer in her daughter's life. A thought crystallized in her mind, clear and beckoning. What if she explored her own art? There had always been a part of her that longed to express herself creatively, but she had buried that desire under practicality and expectation. "Emma," she said suddenly, feeling a rush of excitement, "what if we explored art together? We could take a class or start a project." Emma's eyes lit up, sparkling with the potential of their newfound collaboration. "That would be amazing. You could paint or even write about your experiences. We could create a real dialogue together." For the first time in a long while, Sarah's heart felt light. This was no longer just an action in defiance of Carol. It was an exploration of self. They could challenge perceptions not only of others, but of themselves. As they walked home, Sarah felt emboldened, ready to dive headfirst into her own passions while holding space for Emma to fully embrace hers. However, a nagging thought remained at the back of her mind. Had Carol truly been silenced or merely postponed? The internal voice of doubt still lingered, reminding her of the hard work that lay ahead. But as night fell, comforted by the glow of their shared intentions, Sarah decided to confront that voice. The art of resilience was not only about endurance, it was also about creation. What awaited them on this path, carved out of shared boldness and vulnerability? The struggle for authenticity was just beginning, and soon they would discover whether bravery could withstand the echoes of the past. The next morning brought with it a new sun and a fresh resolve. Sarah did not need coffee to wake her spirit. The excitement of possibilities coursed through her veins. As she sipped her herbal tea, she perused Emma's sketches scattered across the kitchen table, each stroke of pencil on paper whispering stories of her daughter's imagination. A sudden thought struck her. What if they documented this journey in a meaningful way? Perhaps an art blog or an online gallery could serve as the canvas for both their works. It would become a sanctuary, not just for their art, but for their evolving voices. She envisioned captions beneath the pieces, reflections of their struggles, achievements, and honest daily experiences. "Emma," she called, excitement bubbling in her chest. "What if we start an art blog? We can share our projects, process, and everything we learn. It'll be a way to hold ourselves accountable and connect with others who might feel the same way we do." Emma looked up, her brows arching in surprise and delight. That sounds incredible. But are you sure you want to share your story with others? What if they don't like it? The question struck Sarah like a jolt. The familiar sensation of doubt returned, a shadow creeping over her resolve. But she shook it off. If they don't like it, that's their problem, not ours. It's not about them. It's about us challenging the narrative we've both lived for too long. This is our opportunity to create from a place of authenticity. Emma nodded slowly, and Sarah could see the gears of contemplation turning in her daughter's mind. They began brainstorming their first piece, deciding to share the emotions they had navigated during their confrontation with Carol. The balance of vulnerability and bravery felt thrilling yet terrifying. As the day progressed, Sarah felt the excitement begin to morph into nerves. The technical aspects tied to creating a blog quickly became daunting. Should she buy a custom domain? Learn web design? Write with the same eloquence that felt natural during conversations but always seemed to escape her when communicating through the written word? No, Sarah whispered, grounding herself as she attempted to quell the rising anxiety. It's not supposed to be perfect. It just has to be honest. That nature of authenticity echoed within her. The fear of criticism was certainly present, yet she could lean into it. A revelation dawned. The act of creating together would forge a deeper bond with Emma and illuminate her daughter's skill, a partnership blossoming in shared fear and love. They spent the afternoon diligently sketching out ideas, experimenting with digital platforms, and asking for pseudonyms that resonated with their newly found courage. Sarah found herself laughing at the minor setbacks that initially flustered her. Each small mistake was just part of the learning curve. They would navigate it together. As evening approached, they finally posted their first blog entry, raw with emotional truths and soaked in vulnerability. Sarah hit publish. Her finger hesitated over the mouse button. The published link felt like releasing a kite into the wind, a mixture of freedom and potential chaos. Later, as they sat together on the couch, Emma's analytical gaze suddenly pierced the darkness. "Mom, what if Carol sees this? What if she has something to say?" The question hung heavy in the room. The conflict boiled inside Sarah. Was she truly ready to confront the lingering shadow of Carol, or would this newfound courage shrivel under pressure? The unease shifted in her gut as the fear of repercussions collided with the joy of progression. The myriad responsibilities of their journey loomed. The duality of their vulnerability and the threat of destabilizing feedback gripped her mind, entwined like ivy around her thoughts. What had they set in motion? Then we'll face it together, Em. No matter what happens next, it's still our choice. The block of doubt softened, replaced by a burgeoning sense of determination. Just as she began to feel a flicker of confidence, a notification pinged from her phone. A comment had been left on their blog. It was time to confront what lay beyond their brave endeavor. What would these reactions mean for their bond, their courage, and their art? Would they reinforce their resolve or send them spiraling back into their respective shells? The moment of truth arrived. As Sarah's heart raced, she picked up her phone and stared at the notification blinking against the dim living room light. A single comment on their first blog post. Filled with trepidation, she tapped it open. "Wow, what a sob story! Get a life!" The words stung, pricking the surface of her nascent confidence that had just begun to take form. She felt her breath hitch, a rush of indignation bubbling inside. How could someone be so cruel, especially in a space meant for sharing vulnerability? Emma's inquisitive eyes darted to her mother, sensing the tumult brewing within. "What does that mean?" Emma asked, tilting her head, her youthful curiosity juxtaposing the harshness of reality. It means we're being seen, and we have to decide how we want to react to that." The quiver in Sarah's voice betrayed her upset, yet she held firm. She had stepped into this arena with Emma to reclaim their narratives. This was the moment to show what resilience looked like. Sarah's emotional upheaval rapidly transformed into a teaching opportunity. "Emma," she said, setting down her phone, Let's talk about this. What do you feel when you read that? Emma shifted uncomfortably, a frown creasing her forehead. It's unfair. We were being honest and… Ugh, if they only knew how hard it was for us. But is this what it feels like to put ourselves out there? Yes, Sarah replied softly, embracing the discomfort. But it's also important. For every nasty comment, there could be someone else who feels understood, who finds courage in our story. We can't let a few words take away our power. We have to decide what our voices mean moving forward. The fire in Emma's eyes flickered, bathed in the light of possibility and understanding. But Mom, how do we get past the hurt? I don't want to cry over someone being mean. Reassessing her own emotions, Sarah recognized the teachable moment, aware that she needed to articulate her feelings carefully. Hurt is a part of sharing ourselves. It's what makes everything real. We embrace it and then let it propel us forward. We can take those words and allow them to motivate our next piece. We need to show that we're unbreakable through our art. Together, they hatched a plan, an idea that morphed from anger into inspiration. They would create a series titled Words of Courage, each post addressing negativity and fear while celebrating their journey toward self-acceptance. Sarah could see Emma's energy return. The thought of channeling their vulnerability into something empowering ignited the spark they needed. Throughout the next few days, they immersed themselves in creating this new wave of art. Their home transformed into a sanctuary of color and expression. Paint splatters covered the floor, and soft laughter poured through the walls as they engaged in multifaceted conversations about resilience infused with fresh energy. Through their shared experience, Sarah discovered her own artistic voice too, a flair she presumed was buried under layers of self-doubt. The act of creation became cathartic. She found herself exploring new styles, translating emotions into forms that resonated deeper than mere words could. Yet, even as they prepared to launch their series, a thought nagged at Sarah. Would sharing their challenges push Carol further into their lives? The mere notion of confronting Carol had begun to feel inevitable, and as they adorned their blog with vibrant artwork, the simmering tension of that impending conflict clawed at her. The moment of reckoning drew closer. Both dread and anticipation coalesced within her. Would they once again find strength, or would past insecurities overshadow their blossoming connection? With their upcoming post, they not only prepared to reveal the art, but also the courage that came with it. What awaited them on that fine line of vulnerability and potential confrontation? Would confronting the toxicity in their lives fortify their relationship with each other, or would it invite a storm they weren't yet ready to face? The morning of their big post arrived with the sun filtering through the kitchen window, illuminating the canvas of colors they'd splashed throughout the week. Sarah stood at the countertop, coffee in hand, staring at her phone as the clock ticked closer to the scheduled release time. Her heart raced, a mixture of excitement and dread swirling in her chest. They were not just sharing art, they were revealing their hearts to the world. Emma, her small frame radiating a youthful resilience, flitted around the kitchen, preparing for the day. The energy between them crackled with anticipation, and Sarah wished to bottle it up. This was more than a moment. It was a turning point. Yet, the shadows of past interactions lingered in the corners of her mind, especially the relentless needling of Carol, Emma's grandmother. Carol had always been quick to criticize, her sharp tongue mercilessly dismantling even the smallest of mistakes. Sarah felt a shudder of uncertainty at what might loom once their story went live. "Mom, are you ready?" Emma asked, breaking through Sarah's thoughts. Pulling her gaze from the phone, Sarah nodded, forcing a smile. "Absolutely," she replied, though doubt gnawed at her resolve. They had crafted their piece with compassion and openness, but would the world respond with understanding or derision? As they gathered in the living room, Emma nudged the laptop open. Sarah watched the cursor hover over the publish button, a small yet monumental barrier between their vulnerability and the public eye. "Do you want to count down?" Emma suggested, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Why not?" Sarah managed to say, her pulse quickening at the prospect. 3, 2, 1, they cheered together, simultaneously pressing the button. In that instant, a mix of freedom and anxiety swept over Sarah. She felt unmoored, yet empowered, an exhilarating juxtaposition that turned her world slightly on its axis. They watched as the post went live, the screen illuminating their faces. Comments began trickling in almost immediately, a mix of understanding and criticism. Sarah swallowed hard as she read through them. Beautifully written. And, "This resonates with me." Just then, a new comment appeared. "This isn't relatable. Stop trying to be victims." It echoed with familiar harshness, and her heart sank. The words felt like daggers aimed at their resolve, igniting an inner fire that she had hoped to leave behind. "Did you see that?" Emma asked, her youthful optimism shadowed by the bitterness of an online stranger's disdain. "Yes," Sarah said, her voice steadier than she felt. "But remember what we talked about. It's okay to feel hurt. What matters is how we respond." Tensions escalated in the following moments as spikes of negativity flooded in, yet amidst it, an unexpected reaction emerged. A message from a stranger read, "Your honesty gives me courage. Keep sharing." Sarah felt the buoyancy within her. Vulnerability was a currency they were willing to invest in. But with every surge of support came the prickly reminder of Carol. An image danced in her mind of a confrontation, inevitable like the tide, each word cascading down in waves of tension. That evening, as the day wound down, Sarah felt it was time to confront the tangled relationships in her life, specifically her dynamic with Carol. She had always dressed her words in caution, careful to avoid triggers. But that was changing. She was changing. The thought coursed through her like electricity. What if she could redirect her strength to face her fears? "Emma, I think it might be time to talk to Grandma," Sarah said, surprising herself with the sound of her own voice. In that instant, she recognized a shift, a newly found assertiveness swelling within her. "What if it goes badly?" Emma questioned, uncertainty marring her features. "Then we'll deal with it together. We're stronger now, together," Sarah declared, her heart thrumming in her chest as a sense of determination replaced the fear. How would Carol respond? Would she embrace Sarah's newfound voice or lash out, even harder, like every grandmother under the sun who felt threatened by change? Would this confrontation solidify their relationship or further alienate them? As night fell, Sarah sat at her desk, pen poised above paper, ready to map out the difficult conversation that lay ahead. Uncertainty remained, but she was finally prepared to take the plunge. What awaited her in the depths of this emotional confrontation? Had her journey of self-discovery unshackled a strength powerful enough to reshape her family's dynamics for the better? Sarah sat at her desk, the blank page before her mocking her with the weight of uncertainty. She drafted and erased the words, struggling to find the right way to frame her thoughts. Each stroke of the pen felt monumental. This wasn't just a letter, it was a manifesto of her evolving self. She needed to arm herself with clarity, not just for Carol, but for her own growth. Deep breaths became her rhythm. She began with gratitude, recognizing Carol's role in Emma's life. It was a stark contrast to how she usually framed their interactions, filled with irritation and frustration. By acknowledging the good, perhaps she could soften the blow of the inevitable confrontation. The task ahead was daunting, yet part of her craved this moment. It tumbled through her mind like an unpinned avalanche, finally speaking her truth, that fierce kernel of humanity nestled beneath years of self-doubt. How many times had she allowed Carol's scorn to silence her? Her phone buzzed, pulling her from the depths of contemplative thought. It was a message from Emma. "Mom, are you okay? Do you need help with what you want to say?" The gentle reassurance filled her with warmth. It reminded Sarah that she was not acting in isolation. Emma was in this with her, part of a new pact forged through vulnerability and creativity. "I've got this," Sarah typed back. But internally, she sifted through the waves of anxiety crashing against her resolve. What if Carol's response shattered her newfound confidence? Determined, Sarah refocused. She jotted down what she considered core principles she wanted to discuss: communication, respect, and the essence of choices made out of love rather than obligation. Each point felt like a brick laid down, solidifying her stance. The following morning, life whirled in through the kitchen window, a stark reminder of the mundane, despite the storm brewing inside her. Emma was already sipping her cereal, twirling a strand of hair around her finger, wearing an expression of unwavering support. The sight brought clarity to Sarah's scattered thoughts. "Emma," she began, her voice steady, "can we talk to Grandma today?" The day loomed ahead like a thick fog, but Sarah sensed a pivotal shift. "Are you ready?" Emma asked, her eyes wide but hopeful. "I'll be," Sarah affirmed, her determination layering over the apprehension. The anticipation of the conversation sent a tremor through her body as they arrived at Carol's house. The familiar suburban architecture loomed like a fortress, each brick harboring memories of past encounters tinged with anxiety. Knocking on the door felt like stepping into a gladiatorial arena. Everything hinged on her ability to communicate her truth. Carol opened the door, her expression a mix of annoyance and surprise, but Sarah steeled herself against her initial instinct to retreat. "Sarah, what brings you here?" Carol inquired, her voice edged with skepticism. Nervously, Sarah mustered her courage, recalling the words she had so painstakingly prepared. "Can we talk?" she asked, the weight of the request carrying with it years of hidden dialogue. What followed was a careful back and forth, emotion threading through each word exchanged. Sarah articulated her feelings without yielding to the jagged edges of Carol's sharp words. As they sat in a tight circle of tension on Carol's well-worn sofa, Sarah poured out her heart, weaving in Emma's growing sense of self and their joint artistic endeavors. Carol's eyes hardened at first, but as the conversation unfolded, there were fleeting moments of recognition, reflections of a potential shift, a crack in the armor of preconceived notions. But before clarity could take full shape, Carol shot back with, "I don't know who you think you are trying to change things. You've always asked for my advice, and now you're turning your back on it." The weight of the phrase hit Sarah hard, her resolve faltering beneath the familiar weight of disapproval. That was the moment she realized this was not simply a conversation. It was a negotiation of boundaries, a litmus test of their familial bonds. "Grandma, this isn't about turning my back. It's about moving forward," Emma interjected, strength filling her voice. Sarah felt a rush of pride mixed with surprise. Her daughter was rising, claiming space where both of them had often felt stifled. Would Carol recognize this burgeoning assertiveness, or would she double down, retreating into her comfort zone of judgment? The confrontation shifted in momentum, giving both Sarah and Emma a glimpse of what it meant to stand tall, unyielding in the face of familial opposition. Suddenly, Carol's unwavering stance began to waver, tentative brows furrowing as the realization of change encroached upon her. As the air thickened with tension, Sarah prepared for the final push. Would her daughter's strength evoke a change in Carol, or would history repeat itself, locking them in an endless cycle of misunderstanding and hurt? With the air crackling with the unvoiced potential of their exchanges, Sarah took a moment, inhaling deeply. They were at a pivotal crossroads, where fragility met ferocity. The defining moment loomed ahead, and it was hers to embrace. What truth would emerge from the shadows of the past as they pushed forward into the uncharted waters of their relationship? Would this confrontation ignite a spark of transformation, or extinguish hopes for a different future? The silence that ensued was palpable, a churning sea of unspoken words teetering on the edge of explosion. Sarah could feel the weight of Carol's gaze, piercing and expectant, as if challenging her to redefine the narrative. The air was thick, loaded with possibilities, but the fear of unraveling past grievances hung in the backdrop. Sarah sensed she stood before an invisible wall. Could she penetrate it with the right tools of compassion and fortitude? "Mom," Sarah began, her voice quieter now, searching for a gentler approach. "This isn't about denying your role in our lives. It's about finding new roles as a family, acceptable ones for all of us." The confession felt like a leap into deep waters, but the glimmer of hope propelled her forward. She locked eyes with Emma, who nodded reassuringly, echoing Sarah's resolve. The weight of expectation shifted, and in that moment, the bond between mother and daughter crystallized into a solid foundation upon which they could stand together. Carol frowned, glancing away momentarily, as if her usual defenses were being pulled apart thread by thread. "I'm just trying to help, you know. I don't know what you think you're doing, but maybe I don't know what it means to be a grandmother anymore." Her voice cracked, revealing an underlying vulnerability that was both unsettling and refreshing. The cracks in the facade left room for possibilities Sarah had dared not to consider. This was the opening they needed, the trembling voice of uncertainty to launch a pivotal change. "Maybe we can redefine what we understand as helping, Mom. It doesn't have to come from expectations ingrained over the years. What if we explored new approaches together?" Sarah's heart raced as she dared to plant the seeds of collaboration. As the thought hung in the air, she began to picture a new dynamic, a relationship where everyone learned and grew, rather than one that clung to duties wrapped in musty rituals. But Carol remained obstinate, her pride rising like a fortress against the storm. "And what if I don't understand what you want? What if I can't change? I've been this way for years." There it was, the fear that had dictated Carol's behavior all along, fiercely protective of an identity she thought she had to uphold. Sarah's heart ached at the realization. For years, she had allowed her own fear to dictate conversations, and now it was time to break free from that cycle. "Then let's start from scratch," Sarah replied, her resolve crystallizing. "How about you tell me what being a grandma means to you, and I'll share what it means to me. It's not about accusations. We can truly listen to each other, even if it feels uncomfortable." Emma's focus spurred Sarah forward, the notion of shared vulnerability igniting a flicker of momentum. What if instead of division, they could foster understanding? What if each revelation was a step toward a shared narrative, a family legacy reborn from the ash of resentment? Carol leaned back, her expression shifting from defensiveness to contemplation, as Sarah's words wove through the tension threading the room. Colors cascaded down the rigid drapery of the past, shining a potential pathway forward. As the conversation continued, the lines began to blur between patience and impatience, misunderstanding and empathy. It was a delicate dance, one that required both parties to feel unsteady along the tightrope of their histories. Just as Sarah found her rhythm, Carol's resolve momentarily softened. "I suppose I've never thought about it that way," she admitted, her voice dropping lower. "Maybe it's not just my way. Maybe it's more about us finding a way that works for everyone." The mere acknowledgement sent a surge through Sarah. She felt the tumult within her begin to settle, yet the stakes remained high. Carol could just as easily retreat, but there was power in this exchange. A flicker of something stronger than all their misunderstandings combined. Confidence ignited within her, showing up for herself and her family in ways they hadn't dared think possible. As they delved deeper, reality shifted, leaving notions of control behind. What lay ahead could be an uncharted territory, a chance to weave together the strands of their existence anew. "What happens next, Mom? Can we really reshape this relationship?" Sarah pressed gently, uncertainty still lacing her tone. As the words hung in the air, the potential for genuine dialogue crackled with intensity. Would Carol agree to embark on this new journey together? Or would she retreat to the shadows of her fears, leaving them in the dust once more? In that moment, with possibilities swirling and hearts laid bare, Sarah understood she was at the brink of a transformative choice, one that could rewrite their family tapestry. But the answer lay ahead, waiting in the echo of the silence that ensued between them. What lay beneath the surface, yearning to be discovered? The air in Carol's living room shifted with a profound stillness. Sarah could see that the tension had morphed into something almost palpable, an opportunity waiting to be seized. The vulnerability each of them exhibited created a sort of sanctuary, a moment where hurt could transform into understanding. Facing Carol, Sarah's heart raced, fueled by both trepidation and fierce love for Emma. "Mom, I know none of this has been easy for you. It's not about erasing our past, but building a future. Let's try to navigate this together." She could feel Emma's encouraging gaze, bolstering her resolve. Carol stared at Sarah for several heartbeats that felt infinitely stretched in time. It was as if she was quietly processing Sarah's brave words, the acknowledgement of a different way forward, sparking an internal reflection. Her tightly knotted expression began to soften, just enough for vulnerability to infiltrate the rigid walls she had built around herself. "I never realized that my way," Carol's voice cracked, gathering strength as she continued, "was stifling. I always thought I was doing right by you and Emma." The admission hung in the air, heavy and laden with regret, yet oddly liberating. It marked the first time Carol had taken a step toward recognizing the impact of her words, a small victory in breaking the entrenched cycle of criticism and fear. Sarah seized upon the moment's momentum. "Yes, and it's okay to admit that we've all made mistakes along the way. We can redefine this together, make room for each other's dreams. I want you to be a part of Emma's growth, but I need you to understand the weight of your words. Your support can be transformative." A flicker of resolve ignited in Carol's eyes as she absorbed her daughter's words. An opportunity had emerged, one filled with the potential for connection, a chance to forge new paths instead of replicating old ones. "Perhaps I can learn to appreciate what art means to Emma rather than seeing it as childish or frivolous," Carol answered, her tone reflecting a rare openness. It felt like I was just trying to protect you two from disappointment." Sarah felt a fierce wave of gratitude. The walls were beginning to shift, even if just slightly. They were not out of the woods yet, but they were taking the first steps toward collective evolution. "And in doing so, maybe in a way, you've inspired us to rise above that fear," Emma added, with a grateful smile. "But we need your encouragement. Let's find common ground where we all can celebrate who we are." The conversation began to flow more freely as questions turned into genuine inquiries. They discussed how Carol could engage in Emma's creative process without projecting her own insecurities. They explored methods through which Carol could share her dreams and aspirations, revealing the layers of love, protection, and misunderstanding that colored their interactions. "I think I can step back and listen," Carol finally said, her gaze flickering to Sarah, then back to Emma. "I don't want to be the one who casts shadows on your light." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, overwhelmed by the moment's significance, a true turning point in the dynamics of their family. She felt Emma's hand slip into hers, fingers intertwining in a display of united strength. As they wrapped up their exchange, they finalized a pact to engage in regular discussions about their evolving relationships and to actively support each other's journeys, free of judgment or unsolicited advice. It was a vow steeped in love, mutual respect, and acknowledgement of their personal dreams. A wave of confidence washed over Sarah. They had not only confronted the dark cloud of Carol's influence, but had transformed it into a radiant opportunity for growth, a beacon lighting the way for each other. She felt a sense of personal accomplishment. Their dialogue had not only empowered Emma, but had rejuvenated her connection with Carol. As they exited the house, Sarah's shoulders felt lighter, an expression of relief rolling through her entire being. Emma beamed with the fired-up radiance of youth, full of hope for the future, for the artistic pursuits she had fought to defend, and for the grandmother who was, perhaps at last, ready to engage without her previous limitations. Walking home, a renewed sense of possibility paved the path ahead. Sarah felt herself standing taller, no longer burdened by the fear of judgment. She had redefined her narrative. The bond she forged through dialogue would drive growth not only in Emma's artistic pursuits, but in the family's relationships as a whole. In a world where criticism had the power to wound deeply, they emerged victorious, not just because they confronted the judgment together, but because they committed to foster an environment of love, understanding, and acceptance moving forward. Sarah reflected on her journey, realizing she had grown in ways she had never imagined. She had transformed from a protector wrapped in fear to an advocate fueled by love, confident and ready to embrace not only Emma's aspirations, but her own. This victory epitomized her personal journey of evolution, from uncertainty into empowerment, ignited by the very act of confronting what once constituted a threat. She felt poised, ready to face the world, not just as a mother, but as an individual possessing intrinsic worth, an accomplished artist in her own right, inspired by the very spirit of collaboration and encouragement she had fought so hard to nurture. It was time to celebrate this new chapter, and as they strolled along the sun-drenched path, Sarah whispered to Emma, "Let's create art together, not just for the world to see, but for ourselves to feel." Emma's eyes sparkled with delight, her voice laced with excitement. "Yes, let's." This moment brought clarity. It was about opening themselves to the world, inviting it to witness their growth. They would never again allow fear to dictate their narrative, only love and artistry. And in that moment, in the heart of their transformed relationship, Sarah knew the past could no longer define them. They wrote their story anew, conquering judgment with profound understanding and mutual empowerment. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Every voice counts. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand how crucial your support is for the channel.